Amer, welcome to the TCT set of Dragonfly here in San Fran.
Well, thanks for having me here, and welcome to the Bay Area.
That's right. Man, I tell you, I remember during the COVID days, Orlando, I think we had TCT in, and it was sparse. It seems like TCT's got its vibe back with the number of booths here and that amount of action on the floor. Are you reading it like I'm reading it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just TCT, but it's also San Francisco. The AI has really changed the equation. Things were not looking so great, but now it's really in a different place. Prices were going down, now they're going up higher than the rest of the Bay Area. So I think we're seeing all of this investment in AI. It's impacting, the city. You can see it in the buzz of TCT here, but it's also impacting healthcare. We are also taking advantage of these tools and really making use of them in our portfolio. So it's really AI in my book. That's really where the money is and having the biggest impact for us.
I
Right?
guess I didn't think about it that way, and it's really interesting. It was evident during the Shark Tank yesterday. I had the privilege of sitting in that squad and making the final decision there. And you could see the wrestling match that was going on when we were debating after it was over in the back conference room of there were a few AI components and there were a few classic episodic analog device treating a therapeutic challenge. And well, are you investing in the healthcare as it is today, or are you investing in healthcare of the future, was my argument. And you've moved that way with some of the properties and portfolio companies of Shifamed.
Yeah, for us, at the end of the day, you have to take advantage of the latest, greatest. Otherwise, we're not fulfilling our mission. And the latest, greatest is machine learning and AI. And it's really here to augment what physicians can do. It's here to scale the kind of procedure that needs to be scaled. It's there to support physicians that may not have treated that many patients, right? So when you're able to take a standard traditional implant, minimally invasive product, and now enable it to do more, to do better, to improve the quality, the consistency, and really spread and scale in the US, in rural areas, outside the US, everywhere. So that's really, this is the general direction that Shifamed has embarked itself on, and we're starting to see the fruit of those activities. You can see it with Laza, what we're doing there. You see it with Acura, and how we've borrowed and stole ideas from one portfolio company and put them in the other, taking place with Acura. Same thing with Tioga. It's a valve, it's an implant, but how do you make it easier? How do you make it faster? Well, you visualize, to show people during the procedure, guide them through the procedure, add robotics to the system. Nobody really wants to waste time with just labor that's scarce, that's not possible. Where you may not have the same consistency, or you may not get the same person who has had the same kind of experience. It's not just the physicians, but also the nurses and the setup. So what we're doing is really adding more of the burden, the menial stuff, the stuff that just takes time, that's not really added value in terms of decision making, and into the robotics, into the AI and so forth. So that's really, there's certain things robots and machines are going to be able to do without getting tired, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you bring up because you talk about the clinicians themselves, and obviously they're at the center of the action there, and you're giving them advisement, and you're actually pulling up their learning curve dramatically, right, from the mean, so that's helpful. But then the ability to support the rest of that ecosystem, whether it's in the changing sites of care in ASCs or outpatient surgery centers, as well as the hospitals and the emerging sense of advisement in the middle of a procedure. And you said something interesting. You said, stole an idea from another Shifamed company. I think that's going to create a cultural wave throughout the Shifamed organization, the AI ML, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we started with we started really with enterprise software. We wanted to make changes and improve how we did things so that you could work remotely, different groups, different disciplines. That was Enlil. And that was our foray into cloud computing. Then we started doing other things, like really taking advantage of machine learning, adding sensors, putting the robots to use. And so that's really, it started in one, migrated to the next, and now it's really spread to the portfolio as a whole. Some of the companies from the beginning, for example, Adana, it's intended to be a forecasting tool at the end of the day. It's a dashboard, right? It's an implant, it's a therapy, but the sensors and the ability of the sensor data to go to the cloud automatically of data that's throughout the day and night, ultimately, how do you make use of that? Is you take that data and you use it to train the model so that the system is able to alert the physician to say, this patient needs attention, pay attention to this patient, they may need a different drug or a different dosage. And then if things still don't improve, then you can go and intervene. So that kind of a concept, it's based on, let's call it an implant, but the sensor allows you to collect the information, but ultimately the machine learning is making use of all of that. So it can really so the patient is able to self-medicate appropriately. They don't have to go to the hospital because the data is there, and the data of stuff they didn't have before. Left and right pressure data. It's hard, you can't have that unless you're in an major invasive procedure. But now you're getting that throughout the day and night. So those are the things that, they're built to leverage the AI. But then you're doing a thrombectomy, right? Or you're doing a valve. Originally, we're using normal tools. You're looking at the CT, and then you're using the fluoro and the ultrasound during the procedure. But then when you start realizing, and you see what Laza Medical did with 3D reconstruction, 10 times a second of the whole heart, based on just the ultrasound. And now the engineer that's doing the mitral valve replacement says, wow, if you can couple the image output with a servo motor and close that loop, I can take one of my most difficult steps and automate it so that the physician is still in control, they're still moving the catheter, but there are certain steps that are really tedious, that require 2 or 3 hands. Now I don't need another physician. Now I can consistently make that step. That's really sort of how one thing leads to another and leads to the other. And so those are the kinds of things that are really important. And I think industry's role is to bring those on, right? Nobody's going to abandon the ultimate value of a valve. But if I can make it so that I can implant it consistently and I have a good outcome, good placement consistently, we win.
And it also becomes more inclusive of a clinician who may or may not have enough experience, because placing a valve is not an easy play necessarily, right? I mean, and then with Tioga, we also have a different valve profile, which allows it, to be more inclusive of the population. So it's interesting, you're talking about, so Shifamed historically has been known as an incredible innovation factory, fast follower on technologies that are starting to move, and you usually will look at that, huge markets, and add features and capabilities that far outperform the existing player. But now you're introducing AI and ML on the front end, and still keeping that thesis. Have you noticed anything about the back end yet? After we get a technology going, there was a time in medtech not too long ago where you got a certain technology and you got knocked on the door from the potential acquirers. Now they seem to be looking for more evidence in certain areas. Oh, that may change with AI and ML as well, right? But let's just say it doesn't. What have you seen over the last few years, trends in industry?
So, clearly the strategics want to wait as long as possible. They always had that instinct, but they couldn't afford to not, to allow a competitor essentially take the top spot. And so they would buy earlier. But now all of them collectively are trying to push back even more. The environment has changed, interest rates are higher, borrowing money is not for free anymore, and they're being scrutinized a lot more. Is this hitting the P&L for too long before it gets released? So they really want to essentially leverage more of the balance sheet, buy as late as possible. And there's definitely been a shift. We have to run the companies for longer. We have to raise more money. We have to provide more evidence. It's hard to sell a company just on 1, 2, or 3, or 4 patients. I think those days, for the most part, are behind us. And so I think what everybody has to adjust now, the startups, the investors, and the ultimate, the strategics, is that it's going to take longer. So you're going to need to support it longer. You need to build the resiliency within, plan for it, because it is a different environment. There will be always some cases where transactions will take earlier than expected. Those are going to be special cases. There's maybe one player and nobody else, or it's a huge difference and And you have to have that top spot, and so in some cases transactions take place there. But I think that's not the rule. That's the exceptions. So as either an investor or a operator, entrepreneur, you have to really account for it and plan for those kinds of things. Now, the good news is that a lot of the AI machine learning capabilities are not impacting, are not making like the randomization more difficult, because they usually are not related to randomization. They're not related to randomized trials. They're related to technology and technology improvements, which can be demonstrated in other ways, not necessarily impacting. All of a sudden now you have to do these super long clinical studies and super long follow-up. Often the machine learning is taking place in places where you have a more immediate impact of the technique, the implant, what happened, or data coming out and so forth. And then other things will be done with the pivotal studies. So that's the good news about what machine learning and AI has done. And this is something we didn't really think through, and we're realizing that when we're adding these things, they're helping the cause in all kinds of ways. The strategics are more interested, the investors are more interested, and it allows you to scale, and they don't really push the regulatory barrier as much as a normal implant, let's say.
Yeah, and it becomes a force multiplier of the procedure itself, doesn't it? Because you get that early insight, the early advisement, even the planning, right? And then intra-procedure, you might be getting support in there, right? And then post, we're seeing more and more of this follow-up on the patient, active sensors inside, adding longer value to that patient as well. One of the other things that I've seen over the last few years is we saw a lot of med tech come from the EU into the US because EU MDR and some of the restrictions there. But now, with even companies like CRF, they're talking about TCT in the Middle East. We're talking about Arab Health. We're starting to see companies move outside the borders of the US to expand their influence in med tech, and also, candidly, look for financing.
Absolutely, and we're part of that. We are looking for different people, with different investment approaches. That may not always sort of fit what we need, in the U.S., right? So we're looking for these alternatives, and we're finding them in certain cases, and it's been incredibly helpful to us. Like, we did a financing for Supera. Obviously Novo led that deal. That was fantastic for us, but QIA was part of that investment. And we're talking to other groups, QIA is being the sovereign fund of Qatar. So we are looking and talking to different folks all around the world that may have a different kind of interest or ability to invest at different time periods that may be more challenging for, let's say, call it the typical USVC. So we are looking for that, because how else are you need to find the funds and the resources anywhere that can be done. And in some cases, you do joint ventures and things like that. So everything's on the table, right? We have to advance, we have to keep making progress. And when there's common interests and ways where we can help each other, we do it. The world is more than just one region, one continent. There's a lot of things going on, and it is, the startups sometimes, when they get more, I would say, further along, they sort of start behaving more like a large company. Larger companies, they have facilities all over the place. They're doing clinical studies all over the place. They have revenue from all kinds of geographies. And startups have to start thinking more like that. They're not going to behave, and they're not going to be able to be like the large medical device corporations. But there's certain things they have to start to anticipate, and also not put all the eggs in the one basket, right? You don't want to be too much in one geography or the other, but you do want some diversification and some resiliency. And that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, and we're seeing that now, especially being forced into that from a financing vehicle perspective, whether it's public markets seem to be opening up again, finally, thank goodness, international sovereign funds coming in, structured deals happening in and outside the US. So I think that's healthy. And we're also seeing structured deals coming in earlier with the strategics instead of the big ones like we've seen recently announced. What are you going to keep your eyes on as the leader of Shifamed over the next 24 to 36 months? Whether it's technology, whether it's partnerships, and the med tech community at large?
I mean, for me, really, my biggest job right now is fundraising. It's not very complicated. We have a number of companies that have achieved amazing things. You know, we met, exceeded often some of our deliverables in terms of the technology. So now you've got to take that and generate the additional evidence either to start a US study or to complete a US study or to initiate, you know, to prepare for a US study. And that funding is still not easy. You know, unless you're at the very end and ready to be sold, you know, you still have to fund, and those investors are not quite what they used to be. So my mission really over the next 36 months is to get there, you know, get the money so we can keep moving the ball forward. And I think once you do, once you hit your deliverables, once you generate all that data, you get your approval, then all kinds of doors open up.
It's true, and the investors get rewarded for having the confidence.
And there's a different set of investors available
Correct.
at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, Amr, as usual, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you very much, and a real pleasure to talk to you, as always.
Thanks. I'm Joe Mullings from the floor at TCT 2025, San Francisco. Be well.